So this is my setup that I'm rewinding a power transformer on. Started it last night. Well, actually I started it last weekend as far as tearing it all apart and rewinding it. It was for that reel-to-reel. The secondaries were gone. Over here's some of the stuff I took out of it. All the E-plates and such. I took it all apart. Here's what's left of the actual secondary winding here. Stinks too. But anyway, I'm going to rewind this thing, and I'm hoping to actually put a little bit of video on here showing the rewinding process. But as you can see, I've got to look through a magnifying glass to watch what I'm doing. The wire is so fine, it's 38 gauge. I've already wound around 500 turns of 28 gauge for the primary, and I'm getting ready to run the secondary, and that's about 2,500 turns. So it's going to take a while. My counter actually goes up to 99,999. I only have to do 2,500, but halfway through I have to stop and put the separator in there. It's basically for the ground on the secondary. I'll be putting that in there. So anyway, I wanted to show a little bit of this. I did take a lot of video when I was taking that transformer apart. Unfortunately, because of the way I had this phone situated in my tripod above my bench, it rotated and became keyhole, and so I'm not really showing any of it. I may insert some of it in here just so that you have a little bit to go by, even though it's keyhole. But for now, I'm going to stop this here. I'm going to start winding it, and if I can do it without having to look through my magnifier, I'll see if I can't get this thing hung so that you guys can watch. Okay, I'm hoping that this is in normal view. It's supposed to be in normal view. And I've got about 947 windings on here at this point. I'm going to go ahead and continue on, see if I can do this without screwing it up, but give you guys an idea kind of how this is going. There's 1,200. I want about 1,250. I'm going to go ahead on back this way a little ways. It's 1,230. $1,245. There's 1,250 right there. Now I have to check my ohms at this point because I should be about 450 ohms at this point. So I got to get that set up. Okay, so my tripod's not real stable. As you can see, it's moving, and hopefully it won't continue to move. I ohmed it out, and I'm supposed to be about 450 ohms. And I was 330, so I got to put some more turns on here, and obviously I'm guessing I'm at 1,275 at this point, so I think I'm going to run it up to 1,500 and see what we get, because I can always take some off. So let's run it on up to 1,500 and see what we get. Alright, this is coming up on 1,500 right there. 1,500. I gotta check it again. Alright, so we are currently at 407 ohms. And I gotta get it up to another at least 420. At least 420. Because what it should measure is 420 on one side and 450 on the other. But let me see what I can do with this. Okay, so here's what I've done. See if I can rotate this around a little bit without breaking my wire, because it feels like it's getting stuck on my roll here or something. There we go. I got a copper plate. There's what's going on right there. Okay. So I have a copper plate right there that went underneath here, and I sandwiched it between two pieces of fish paper, and the copper plate has this terminal welded to it right here that's going to wind up being the the split between the it's the ground and the secondary, right in the middle, approximately in the middle. I've got 400 and I think it was 66 ohms there. All total, I'm supposed to have about 900. So I guess I'll be going for about 420 on the other half, something like that. But 440 maybe. And that's what I did, and I got that all sandwiched in the fish paper. I welded one end of the wire that had been wrapping to it, and now I've got the second portion of it right here, and I got to get another 1,500 or so turns on it. Before we're golden. So I am going to start turning this, and we will come back in a couple minutes. Be around 2,500 turns total. This is not difficult, but it is tedious. And trying to get an even wind, and this 38 gauge wire is so thin and so fine, it is so easy to break it. And all it would take would be one little misstep on the spool down here when I'm wrapping this, that the wire is just gonna snap, and then I would be really screwed. I'm not sure. I would probably have to pull all that wire all the way back to that plate off. And I really don't want to have to do that. This is actually the hardest part of this. And the one that's left is going to be fairly easy because it's just a filament winding. There's only 50 turns of it, and it's 20 gauge, so it should be pretty darn easy to do. Alright, so the secondaries are wound, and they ohmed out about where I wanted them. It was at 425 on the one and 460 on the other. 466 actually on the other. That cardboard will all come off when I'm done. So this is the other end of the secondary here. It's going to come out over here. I'll put a little bit of fish paper between there before I stick it on there, and then I'll wind the filament winding. And then I'll cover it with fish paper, and we'll start to assemble this thing. 3,144 turns. I had too much on, I had to pull it back off. That's what I pulled back off in order to get my ohms right. You guys missed me winding the primaries. I wasn't thinking, I didn't have my camera on. I wound 25 turns twice. I got 50 turns of, not the primaries, I'm sorry, the filament windings, the last winding. The first winding was the primary, and we did about 800 turns of 28 gauge wire on that. The second windings were the secondary windings, and I think I did like 3,200 turns of 38 gauge wire, and now I just got through turning 50 turns of 20 gauge wire, and this is the actual filament winding. And I just got through wrapping it with double-sided tape, and I'm putting fish paper on it right now. These are the two wires right here coming out that are the filament winding wires. So I'm getting ready to cover those up, and I realized I hadn't showed you guys anything, and I decided I wanted to at least show you that. So as I continue to wrap my fish paper on here, I will let you see that. It's halfway close to the width that I want it. Like that. Alright. So now I got all the windings on there. Now I just gotta finish the coil, dressing it. So I will be back in a little bit once I have a little dressing on here. One thing I didn't show you guys, I can show you right now, was the coil had the square hollow core, right? And as you can see, my tool here uses cones, and the cones were too small for the tool. So what I did was I just so happened I had a square block that was about the right exact diameter to slide just perfectly in that thing, and I drilled a hole down the center, and it wasn't perfectly centered, so I had to kind of ream it out. But that's what I did, and then I glued the cardboard on the ends to keep the coils from running off. And now I'm going to be taking those off and this out so that I can finish up the coil. But I wanted to show you that. Okay, so I removed the center core out of it, obviously, and I added some heat shrink tubing on all of my fine wires, as you can see how fine that wire is, and anchored them so that they can't get pulled very easily. And I epoxied the end of it here, and once that sets up, then I will continue to connect new wiring to the leads here, and then that'll get heat shrinked, and then it'll get attached back kind of like it was before. I'll probably do it with epoxy though, but it's coming along. So I'll show you the other side before I put the epoxy on it. I just wanted to get these wires protected. It's so fragile at this point. This is the other end of the coil. That's the end once I got the epoxy on it. I'm getting ready to epoxy this side. You'll need to watch me mix that up, but I figured I'd show you what it looked like prior to the epoxy. Alright guys, so here's where we are right now with this coil. It's all wound. I sealed the bottom side of it with epoxy. I sealed the top part of it with epoxy. As you can see, it was two different types of epoxy. I've got all my leads all located where they need to be. We're going to connect the wires to leads that I've cut, and these are extra long because I want to make sure I got plenty. And then once I get them attached, I'll be attaching each of the leads to this paper as it was on the other one. I'll probably be using those clippy things, so I'm just going to epoxy it, I think. And then the whole thing will get wrapped with another wrap or two of fish paper. Well, that's the plan. So I've got two red wires that will be for the high voltage, which is the secondaries. Actually, I thought I had that cut into one piece. Apparently I didn't. Into two pieces, one long piece. Okay. Have a yellow with a red tracer I added to it, which technically for the center tap on the secondary. This should be red with a yellow tracer, but I don't have red with a yellow tracer. I didn't think a yellow would show up on my red wire, so I'm using yellow with a red tracer. Then for my heaters, for the tube heaters, I'm using the green and the brown. And then for the primaries, I'll be using black. I've got two of them. I dropped one. There's a second one. So that's the plan. I'm getting ready to work on this now. I'm not going to do it on camera because this is going to be very tedious working with this fine wire, and I got to be able to get up close and see it. You know, unfortunately, when I'm using this, I can't see it. So I will come back in a little bit. Okay, I apologize for the swing of the camera. I decided I would go ahead and show you what I'm doing here. So what I've done is I have stripped this red wire that's going to be for the high voltage secondary. The other thing I've done is I have stripped the enamel off of this wire. I don't know, let's see if I can get it where you guys can see it. This is one of the high voltage secondary wires. Yeah, I think you can see where you can see the difference where it looks copper versus red. That's where I stripped that off. What I'm getting ready to do is tin this. I just stuck it in some flux. I'm going to get a little solder on my soldering iron here. I apologize if I take this out of the screen because I'm trying to kind of see what I'm doing as well as show you. So I apologize if I get it off screen, but we'll just kind of touch that to that, and that will tin it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, this is where I say this stuff gets a little tedious because I can't really see what I'm doing and show you too, but I got to be very careful not to break this wire here. The plan is here is to wrap this copper wire around this wire enough turns that I can get a good connection on it, and then I will heat it up and add solder to it. Now, I don't want to get into the enamel or it won't stick. So I've got it in there right now. We're going to give it a shot. Might actually even add a little more rosin to it, just so it can get on that bare wire that I just wrapped on there. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. Hopefully I'm on screen, barely on screen. Let's move it over a little bit. Hopefully that soldered that. Let it set for a second. See what I got here. Get my magnifier because I can't see. I'm going to try some on that back side a little bit, just to be safe. It's one of those things that you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to have to go back. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to put this thing in some more heat shrink, but I want to leave some expansion room. I don't want anything to be able to pull on that wire. So going to get a little bit slightly larger shrink than what I had the first time. I don't know if this is going to be big enough for this one. I think it may be. Yeah. I'm going to put, well, maybe it will be. I don't know. Let's see. Yep, there it is. Okay. So what I'm planning on doing here is I'm already making contact, right? Now I want to just kind of wrap this around to give it some backbone. And I don't want it to be tight. And I do want to cram it sort of in that. Like that. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing here, but I'm trying to make it a good connection here that doesn't have tension on it, so that I don't have to worry about, you know, like expansion occurring or contraction. And if I had everything super tight, then it might not go in. And I got some of it in there, but I didn't get all of it in there. Might be able to kind of wrap that around a little bit. Come on. Get it to go around that one. I think I got it in there. Like that. Oop. A piece of wire sticking out there. I just don't want to kind of do that. Okay. Now that I got that, I'm going to heat it up. And then I'm going to put another piece over this whole thing. Okay, heat that up. Now I want to put a bigger piece that should go over the top of all of that. Doesn't really matter if it's this one or another one. I don't really have a particular reason of what color I'm choosing here. I think I am going to use this clear if I can get it on there, but I don't need all that length, so we're going to go probably about right here. Get my scissors here. Turn my soldering iron off because I'm done with it for the moment. And we'll put this one on here. And I want to see if I can get this one to go over that red one. I hope it's big enough to go over that. I think it is. We're going to find out here in a second. The whole idea is I got to give good support. Yeah, there we go. I got to give good support to this, and I'm going to be putting this in epoxy ultimately to hold all this. So I think that'll be good right there. Let me see if I can shrink this up. Saw a little piece of shrink tube fall off the table. Okay, I'm really happy with that. Okay. So that's one, and that's going to come over here and lie right there. Now the other piece of the shrink wrap is already in the epoxy, so there shouldn't be any tension on that wire. At least I hope not. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these. That's the plan. I did the hardest one first. I still got another the hard ones right here. But that's the plan. I'll come back once I get it. Okay, so here's what we got right at the moment. I've got them all connected, heat shrink together, and currently glued onto this fish paper. What I'm getting ready to do is mix up a batch of epoxy, and I'm going to cover all this with epoxy, and then I'm going to fold the fish paper on around it. And between the epoxy and the fish paper, it'll hold them all in place. Let's get that done.